Puppy-sensei presents Minority Report. Um, so, one more time, let's go over what a Minority Report is. First, Minority Report is a novella by Philip K. Dick that is about thought crime. A minority report is also the definition of a report released by a minority in an opinion. So the majority has some opinion, the minority has some other opinion, and they release a report on it. And finally, this is Minority Report. It is a series where I spotlight and highlight and give a platform to people from marginalized communities. And today, my guest is going to be CoffeeCat. And so we'll go ahead in just a moment and call CoffeeCat and get CoffeeCat on the phone, on the Discord call, and we'll talk. It's going to be great. I'm really, really looking forward to it. If there are any problems with volume, by all means, please let me know. So, here we go. Let me call this cat. Abada. Abada. Hello! Uh-oh, I cannot hear you.
That's because I wasn't saying anything.
Oh, okay. That's valid. Not saying something is a completely valid response, in my opinion. Just say nothing. Say less.
Yeah, just answer the phone and say nothing. Give us nothing.
All right. Witch Hazel is saying that your volume might need to come down just a little bit, so I'm gonna do that. All right. Hopefully that's better.
Okay.
Yeah. How's that?
I have no idea. How is it?
I don't know either. I also have no idea. Better. Okay. Witch Hazel says it is better. So good. All right. Hello, CoffeeCat. Hi, CoffeeCat. I'm so super happy to have you here today. I'm really excited for our conversation today, and I think why don't we start off just by having you tell chat who are you?
Who does his coffee? That is the question of all time. Well, first of all, thank you for having me on the program.
Of course.
I watched the first one with Evie, and it was a wonderful time. So I'm very happy to be on as well. But
yeah.
I started out doing community management stuff for Celeste. I'm sure you all know who she is. She never lets you forget.
Yeah.
But yeah, started out doing community management for her, but I also do music production.
I'm not sure if you're cutting in and out. I think we have lost CoffeeCat. Hello?
Did you lose me?
Yeah, for a second there, I think you might be cutting in and out just a little bit.
Yeah. I wonder what I can do about that.
I don't know.
We will find out. Give me 1 second here.
You seem clear now, so that's good. Be very still, says Coffee Mom.
Be very still. Will that work?
I have no clue. I don't know how anything works.
Me either.
Yeah.
Well, am I coming through a little clearer now?
Yes. Yeah, I'm getting word. I'm getting word in the studio that your signal around where you are is very not good.
Yeah, it's spotty.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
Yeah, that's very fair. All right, so community manager for the wonderful, the very extremely talented Celeste, and also in your own right, pretty heckin' amazing musician, if I may say so myself.
Well, thank you very much.
Is musician the right term for me to use in this case, or like music personer? I don't know how to do it.
I always get off that. Sorry, it's one of my cats.
Oh no!
Stop it. You know what? He has this thing about blankets in that we don't let him near them for specific reasons.
Is it pee? I bet it's pee.
No, that was another we had. Yeah, that's a whole other story. No, we did
Mm,
have a cat who had a problem with that,
yeah,
an incontinent cat.
valid. Um,
But yeah, no, the way I describe it is I would just very flippantly
mhm.
sort of say that I make sounds.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Um, Law would like to know where we can listen to your music. I have my own specific answer to that, but I'll let you field that.
I Where can you listen to it?
Mm,
Um, Nowhere yet.
okay.
You can listen to the album I produced for Celeste on her YouTube channel. I'm very proud of how that turned out. And if
Mm.
you've been tuning in religiously to Puppy-sensei's Pathfinder Apocalypse, which you should be, otherwise I'll come to your house and look at you through the
Ah!
window.
Ah!
Um, you've heard my stuff there.
Yeah. Yeah. You did most of the music on PPA, and you did such a wonderful, wonderful job, and we absolutely just like love it and appreciate it so much. It's so ridiculously helpful. Um,
It's been a wonderful opportunity. It's one of my favorite things I've ever got to be a part of.
aw. And one day we really do have to buckle down and figure out how we make an album of music from Puppy-sensei Pathfinder Apocalypse. I still need to do the research on that, but you know, dog busy.
Yeah, one day when we'll put it on the pile of things to do when we have nothing else left to do.
Yeah. I am taking a vacation at the end of July, so maybe during that time, who knows? Who knows? Maybe I'll have free time that I can actually focus on trying to propel some things forward that are important. But we have already gotten off track. We haven't even gotten to the first real question, and we're already off track. But it's just because I like talking about your music so much, and I think you're incredibly talented. So let's
Well,
dive.
thank you.
Yeah, no, of course. Let's dive into our first actual question. So, also, welcome in, Velvet. Welcome, welcome. I understand that your nickname, CoffeeCat, might actually be more complicated than it seems to be on the surface. Could you tell us that story a little bit?
I sure can.
Yay!
So the fun part about that is I don't remember who came up with it. It was not something that I came up with. It was something I think that somebody in one of Celeste's chats said, and then we just kind of ran with it.
Mm-hmm.
But it kind of came to refer to the Asian palm civet, which is a small nocturnal, primarily frugivorous mammal found throughout maritime and mainland Southeast Asia.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some that live on the Indian subcontinent as well.
Mm-hmm.
Civets are part of the Viveridae family, which includes quite a diverse group of animals that include binturongs, genets, linsongs, and all of these animals are in turn part of the Feliforma suborder, which
Ah.
includes the fossa, the meerkat, the mongoose, all of the members of the Hyenidae family,
Mm-hmm.
which means Manager Sama and I are sisters,
Yeah. I love it.
from a certain point of view.
I love it.
The broader categorizations of feliforms also include the Felidae family of true cats, which
Mm-hmm.
are both big cats and small cats,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not in the business of gatekeeping.
Yeah,
I'm
for
not going to tell
sure.
someone they're not a true cat.
Mm-hmm. I
But what
just
makes the Asian palm civet? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I just want to take a very quick moment to say welcome in everybody that just came in. Welcome in Dr. Gregory House and Rico and Anika. And oh, I just broke my phone. What? Okay.
Holy crap, Dr. House is here?
Yeah, I know, right? But
Oh, I hope he
hi
tells me I
everybody.
have lupus.
Oh no. Uh, anyway, I cut you off, and I'm so sorry. Tell me more. Tell me more. I want to know everything.
Yeah, of course. So what makes civets interesting is because they're known for a few things. They're famously stinky, musky little creatures. They kind of look more like raccoons than cats sometimes. They have like a face mask thing going on.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing that they're most well known for is being used in the production of kopi luwak,
Mm-hmm.
which is a controversial way of processing coffee beans.
Yes.
And the reason it's controversial is because of the methods they use to produce it in industrial quantities. They keep civets in battery cages. I don't know how
Oh.
much you know about industrial farming, but you've probably seen like just stacks upon stacks of chicken-sized chicken cages where there's room for like two or three chickens in there. They don't have any room to do anything else.
Yeah.
That's a battery cage.
Okay. Okay.
And it gets better because once the civets are in the battery cages, they force feed them,
Mm-hmm.
kind of like how they do with geese to make foie gras.
Right.
Sorry for my French, it's really bad.
No.
Um, So they feed these civets nothing but coffee cherries. And the thought process on this goes is that the chemical conditions in a civet's gut are ideal for fermenting the pits of the coffee cherries as they move through the digestive tract.
Mm-hmm.
And then after the civet passes the pits of the coffee cherries, they're harvested and cleaned and roasted, just like typical coffee beans.
Right.
I haven't tried it. I never intend to.
Mm-hmm.
In addition to just being against it on the basis of I don't want to support
Right.
farming practices like that.
Yeah.
The general consensus among experts in the coffee field is that it tastes worse than most traditional forms of processing coffee bean.
Interesting.
Yeah, the acid in there breaks everything down. I've seen it compared to like stale Folgers coffee.
Oh, gross. Gross.
I know, right?
Hmm.
Um, the value in it is basically it's a novelty that became a luxury item because of like I don't know, pick a reason. Why is Italian leather a luxury item, right?
Right.
Why is
Absolutely.
champagne a luxury?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's because of it's because of the way it's made. It's not because it's necessarily like higher quality. It's just
Mm-hmm.
the pedigree of it.
Mm-hmm. Welcome
So
in,
yeah,
Wolf Devil and DJ Wolf. By the way, happy to have you both here.
hello.
Yeah, I didn't know about that farming practice, and the fact that it's a luxury item that doesn't even taste necessarily better. Like I would have thought one of two things. The kind of one of two ways that I would have thought about it is that a it produces something that is just like extremely so much better than traditional coffee, or b that for some reason it causes it to harvest faster, and they can do it faster this way. But to know that it's just kind of a novelty just makes me concerned.
Yeah, it's kind of repulsive, isn't it?
Yeah.
Repugnant might be the better word.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like we, maybe if torturing the animal made the coffee taste better,
Right.
we could,
Yeah.
we could look past it from a certain point of view.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm playing devil's advocate here, but
I
yeah,
somehow it brings to mind an episode of Star Trek, and the episode that I'm thinking of just is not coming to my mind. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I don't even know what to think about it. It's so weird. Um, hmm,
it is. Yeah, factory farming in general. And I want to be clear here. I
yeah,
don't want to put the blame on like the farmers themselves. Yes, they're doing something that is what I feel is morally fraught at the very least, but they oftentimes don't really have a choice.
yeah.
Especially in America, where if you are fulfilling contracts for, like industrial food processors, you are expected to produce as much of the product as you can,
Mm-hmm.
as quickly as you can.
Quota, quota,
And
quota.
yeah, exactly. And that doesn't really, you're also supposed to do it as cheaply as you can. And
Mm-hmm.
the cheapest way of keeping animals is pretty appallingly inhumane.
Yeah. There is a
So even if,
there's a
no, go
video
ahead.
that I watched recently, and it was talking about the cost that we would incur as people to actually treat animals humanely. I think this was a Kurzgesagt video, if you're familiar with
Yeah, I
it.
was gonna say a fellow
Yeah.
Kurzgesagt enjoyer.
Yes. Yes. But it's remarkable that we're not willing to pay 4 or 5 cents more, just to treat our animals better in these kind of conditions.
Right? And
Yeah.
it is funny, and maybe I mean let's address the civet in the room here. You and I are both vegetarians,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
so we're not exactly the target market for this. It's really easy for somebody to construe this as us being, sanctimonious vegetarians, even though you don't really have a choice in that matter.
Right. Yeah, and Celeste, I know that it's more than 4 or 5 cents, but I mean, there are some small things that can be done, just little things that would cost very little, and it's just like the tiniest little bit that we can do, you know. And again, I'm not a meat eater, but I am not a vegetarian out of ethical concern, right? And that doesn't make me any different than anybody else. There are lots of ethical vegetarians and ethical vegans out there. I'm not one of them. I just can't eat meat. I can't process it. And so it does kind of put me in a different class, because I don't have a choice in the matter. And I guess being a vegetarian, I don't know that we should even consider it a choice, even if it's ethical. Can you have the choice to have ethics? I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, that's sort of a broader
Mm-hmm.
sort of philosophical debate that we probably don't need to get mired in right now.
Indeed, indeed,
Um,
indeed.
but Celeste and I both grew up in farm country. You know, we've seen
Mm-hmm.
her more than me, just the process of raising an animal for food, and it can. Shocking conclusion here for someone who's a vegetarian by her own volition for the most
Mm-hmm.
part.
Mm-hmm.
It can be done ethically.
Yeah. Yeah.
It can be done with dignity and with respect for the animal. You can give that
Mm-hmm.
animal a wonderful quality of life. And I really think that everybody at some point should raise an animal with the intent to consume some part of it because it gives
Mm-hmm.
you an amount of perspective.
Yeah.
Like if you're going to eat meat, you should know.
Yeah.
You should see it if you can.
Mm-hmm. I just want to comment on something that Law said. I'm not a vegetarian, but I'm on board for paying a bit more to have a more ethical and sustainable meat. Um, yeah, I mean, again, I don't want to take too much of the air away, but for everybody out there, and also if you haven't, Coffee Cat, I
Mhm.
cannot recommend enough a book called Under the Skin. If you're looking for a book that you want to pick up and you're interested in things like science fiction and language and also ethical consumption of meat, um,
I think I know exactly what you're talking about.
yeah, yeah, it's
Was that the
such.
one that they made into a film in 2014 with Scarlett Johansson?
Yes, they did, and I don't like the movie. I don't like the movie at all. The book is so much better and so much more philosophical, in my opinion. The movie was just there for shock value, in my opinion.
Yeah,
Um, but the book is so good. And it really kind of raises the question of when do we consider it okay to eat something? Um, uh, but I
yeah.
I also love the book because I'm a linguist, and a lot of the book takes place in the Welsh countryside. So you get these like really long Welsh names for cities, but she's
Hmm.
constantly talking to you in alien speak, right? Because she's like, "Oh, back on my world, which is blah 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 blah," and you can never tell if she's talking about a city in Wales or her planet.
That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
That was, I will say I enjoy the movie for what it is. It's a very effective and creepy piece of like,
Indeed.
uh, I guess it was kind of in there before the whole recent analog horror
Mm-hmm.
market saturation, but it was kind of like a prototype for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the score is really lovely. I'm a big fan of Micah Levi and their
Mm-hmm.
work in general.
Mm-hmm. It is pretty
Um,
amazing.
but one thing I didn't understand about the film is why, with the Welsh setting of the book, why they transposed everything to Scotland
Yeah. Yeah.
in the film.
Right? So
I
weird.
mean, it's all of this. It's not like going between Northern Ireland and the rest of Ireland here. It's all connected. It's all
Mm-hmm.
fairly politically easy to move through.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Law.
don't know.
I'm so sorry that there isn't fan art of those certain characters, but yeah.
Wait, what certain characters?
I can only imagine that there are many, many, many people who would really be interested in seeing more of the aliens from the book. Because in the movie, you only ever really see one of the aliens. You just see kind of her. Um,
Yeah,
but I will say that the movie was de- deliciously Lynchian, in my humble opinion.
indeed.
Yeah.
Another movie I feel this way about is Annihilation. I'm a really big fan of Jeff Vandermeer as a writer.
Uh huh.
Um, but I really don't care that much for the movie.
Hmm. Interesting.
It's good. It's a
Okay.
well done movie, but it's it's just not um it just doesn't stay as true
Yeah.
Vandermeer has more in line in his body of work with like the weird fiction type writers, like
Mm-hmm.
people like I mean the most famous one that people think of is Howard Phillips Lovecraft, but
Yeah.
that whole sort of vein of it. If you want more modern examples, there's China Mayville, who's another favorite of mine.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that tone doesn't necessarily come as across as well in the film, at least to me.
Okay.
It feels like it has more in common with another movie that came out around the same time, which I did really love, but that's Arrival.
Okay. Okay. I haven't seen that one, but
And
I did see Annihilation.
I think as a linguist, I think you'll get a lot out of it.
Okay. Okay. Yeah,
It's cool.
it's weird. We're on opposite sides of the spectrum. I haven't read the novel. I don't know Vandermeer's work very well, but I am a ridiculously big fan of Alex Garland. I've been
Oh
reading
yeah.
his stuff for a long time. So
No, he's a fantastic screenwriter and filmmaker, and I really enjoyed. That was one of the only movies that Celeste couldn't stomach. I'd been getting her slowly into horror
mhm.
throughout our time together, like more comfortable with it, but she couldn't handle some of the bits in Ex Machina. It was a bit much,
Yeah,
and that's fair. That's a deeply unsettling movie.
yeah, it's true. It's true.
Also, kind of Lynchian in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, Law has brought up The City and the City, which is another book that I don't know, but I do know the play The City and the City and the
Yeah,
City.
yeah, that one. That's I believe that's China Miéville, and it's
Uh huh.
about. It's really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It's the only kind of thing I can compare it to is Disco Elysium in a way.
Interesting. Oh, okay.
It's it's deeply concerned with like the ramifications of like politics and borders and
Mm.
the culture and counterculture and things like that.
Interesting.
It's neat. It's very Kafkaesque.
Okay.
Um, maybe a touch or I don't want to say Orwellian because I don't really like Orwell and people throw his name as an adjective around too much.
Yeah. There is a.
But yeah, it
There.
was made into a mini series a while back, City in the City.
Okay. There's a Chinese book that I'm thinking of, and I just cannot remember the name of it. It'll come to me eventually, and I'll remember and I'll tell you about it. But from what I know about the city and the city, it reminds me a whole lot of this Chinese book that I know. That's all about kind of like a spy who's working against the government. It's pretty interesting stuff. So
That sounds awesome. There's a
yeah.
lot of really interesting literature coming out of China these days.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it really kind of like, I think the one that most people know is like the Three Body Problem and the other
Yeah.
books in that series,
Yeah. Absolutely.
which for my money, The Dark Forest is my favorite of that
Okay.
trilogy.
Okay. I'll have to check that
But there's
out.
also another interesting book called The Man with Compound Eyes. That's like a Chinese work of like
Oh.
ecological fiction.
Oh, that's right up my alley.
Yeah, I'll get you a link to that.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Look at us getting derailed by one of my special interests.
Indeed. Indeed. Yeah, I think we're going to talk about special interests later. I almost want to just pull us right there now. But
Just go right there now if you
yeah,
want.
yeah. Let's do it. Okay, what is a special interest?
What is a special interest?
Mm,
A featherless biped?
what?
I said a featherless biped.
I
You
don't.
know,
What? What?
Diogenes in the forum, pluck chicken. Definition of a man. Never mind. So, back on
Diogenes
track.
mention.
Days without CoffeeCat mentioning Diogenes is zero.
I love it.
Okay, so
Mm,
a special interest is a strong interest and intense focus on a particular topic, activity, or hobby.
okay.
While many people have hobbies they enjoy, a special interest is often more intense, more consistent, and more central to an autistic person's life.
Mm, okay.
These interests are often pursued with deep focus and dedication, with individuals spending hours gathering information, creating projects, or talking passionately about their chosen subject.
Mm-hmm.
We often see the term special interest. Celeste just threw the cat burrito at me.
Cat burrito?
We have this cat toy that's a little burrito. She she like pantomime stage walked into the room, flung it right at me. And I wasn't going to address it, but it was so funny that I have to.
And here we have a special interest.
Yeah. Oh, where was I?
I think we were talking
I
about
shouldn't
how
swear
that.
on here. My bad.
Um, we were talking about how that term gets kind of bandied around in a way that is not always super accurate, I think.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So, it gets you see the term special interest thrown around a lot these days, along with the term hyperfixation.
Yep.
Um, but there is a difference between the two.
Okay.
Individuals who have special interest can become hyperfixated on it, but
Mm-hmm.
hyperfixations are more associated with attention deficit type conditions,
Mm-hmm.
and they will last for a period of days to months, while special interests can last for years or decades, or sometimes an individual's entire life.
Yeah.
So that's like special interest light. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's not even, sometimes it falls more on the obsession side of things. The distinction between an obsession and a special interest, speaking psychiatrically, is that obsessive thought patterns about things typically aren't positive. They're not something that the person experiencing them gets any sense of joy, fulfillment, or comfort from, where special interests are often a source of joy and comfort.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a very close friend who had a special interest specifically in Toy Story, of all things. Um,
Oh,
and
yeah?
yeah, and I found that very, very interesting. That I don't know. For me, I feel like I have maybe obsessions. Because
Well,
I
I'm not here to
yeah
armchair diagnose, but those are very consistently found in anxiety disorders.
yeah that's very, very, very true. And I find that I have the tendency to, how do I put this, love something until there's nothing left to love from it, and then I move on, right?
That's a wonderful turn of phrase.
Yeah, yeah. So I don't know, very interesting stuff. So hmm, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm fascinated by this topic, and I want to know more. If you're willing to share more.
Oh, I absolutely can.
Okay.
So there was a 2014 estimate by Caldwell and Jordan that I found that says that between 70 to 90% of individuals on the autism spectrum develop special interests.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's interesting because not everybody does.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think we think that, that's one of the defining features, right? It's like you think of like the archetypal like child obsessed with steam trains or something, right?
Right.
Um, but that is not always the case. There are some like self-response. I don't know how you call them in terms of surveys,
Mm-hmm.
but it was a survey conducted that found as many as 95% of individuals had special interests. But
Wow.
um, I don't know, isn't that neat?
Yeah, that's very
And the
interesting.
average longevity of a special interest was about 13 years,
Wow. Wow. Fascinating.
right? So if you live, what is life expectancy these days? It's like 70, 80 years. It's always getting longer.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm just like, how am I supposed to plan to retire when you keep telling me I'll live longer?
Welcome in Tsubaki
Yeah, and I'm
Lights,
like,
by the way. Welcome for the first time.
oh, hello.
Yeah. Uh, are you familiar with the term otaku and how interesting I find that to be in conjunction with this topic?
You know, I was just kind of ruminating on that the other day. But
Yeah.
yeah, I want to hear what your thought process is on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we have this tendency to talk about otaku and claim otaku in America and other parts of the West, where we're like, oh yeah, I'm otaku, whereas in Japan, otaku, it's not a clinical diagnosis or anything, but the meaning of otaku is not necessarily a positive thing in Japan. So otaku really just means your home, right? It is your home. And that is the space where you feel the most comfortable and get the most fulfillment. So generally speaking, one person who is otaku in Japan kind of has one fandom, one manga, one anime, one type of electronic or video game, and they focus entirely on that. That becomes their home. It becomes their decor. It becomes their room. It becomes their life. Um, and that kind of, to me, feels like a sort of almost like a special interest. Yeah, it's not necessarily negative, Tsubaki lines, but it's also not necessarily celebrated. Like, I think here in America, we could easily walk around and go, I'm otaku and proud. And in Japan, there aren't too many people who are like, okay, hi everybody, I'm otaku, and my quote unquote special interest is the Dead or Alive games or something like that.
No, I think you're very right. I mean,
Hmm.
in some cases, I've even seen it used with the same sort of way and intent that someone would use a slur, right?
Yeah, yeah,
It's not something that most people who um, are the are otaku are particularly proud of.
yeah.
And I think, I want to state this first. I'm a loud American. I'm a
Hmm.
Westerner.
Hmm.
Only foreign country I've ever been to is Mexico, and that was just a day visit to Tijuana.
Hmm.
I don't know. I'm not an expert
Yeah,
on the political, sociopolitical, prevailing cultural conditions of Japan. I
yeah,
am just a cat
yeah,
who notices patterns because my brain is like that.
yeah.
But there is a sort of unwillingness to talk about neurodivergence
Hmm.
in Asian cultures, but in Japan specifically. And I think things like otaku and hikikomori are kind of like dancing around the issue.
Hmm.
Like they won't call a spade a spade. And I'm not saying that every hikikomori has some sort of, autism spectrum disorder or
Hmm.
some sort of mental health disorder or whatever, but
Yep.
there's an amount of correlation that seems to exist that probably warrants some serious research on the subject.
Hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And that's as definitive a statement as I feel qualified to make,
Yeah.
since I'm completely unqualified.
Yeah. Um, having spent quite a bit of time in Japan, I find it very interesting that to some degree, Japan does a lot of things, and I'm gonna make some pretty bold claims here. So please excuse the kind of universality of these claims that I'm going to make. But Japan does a lot of things that outwardly look like they provide accessibility. I think it's very important. So, as an example, major streets not only have grooves in the pavement that are designed to make life easier for people who are blind, but also those are pretty clearly marked in a really, really kind of like important, very visual way, that shows anybody who's there, look, we're doing our best to be inclusive of this community with a disability. But at the same time, the kind of overarching prevailing culture doesn't really extend that same degree, right? It's we're gonna show that we're doing our best while not really walking the walk.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I think that's definitely not a phenomenon that's exclusive to Japanese culture.
100%.
I think I remember reading once about four levels of potential like societal oppression that an individual can face that come from like the individual, the interpersonal, the community, and like
Hmm.
the societal level.
Yeah.
And even if the person, even if the factors at the top, the societal wide ones, are making moves towards broad strokes moves towards acceptance and accessibility and things like that, that doesn't do a lot of good if the other three factors there are ambivalent or actively working against that.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
It's a nice gesture, but
Hmm.
that's kind of all it is.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it's not important.
Hmm.
God, I would really love it if the federal levels of certain institutions would reaffirm their commitment to that type of change
Yeah.
in,
Yeah.
in in my country. But it really does not have a lot of bearing on an individual's day-to-day life. It doesn't make it easier for them to get the support or the acceptance that they need.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, and yeah, I'll just take a moment to address what you brought up, Celeste. I completely agree with you, and it's definitely not my job or my intent to make any kind of claim on anybody else's culture at all. I'm definitely not speaking to that. I'm making the observation that I think what the government does in multiple different countries versus what we do superficially is not always in alignment. So that's just sort of what I'm thinking about right now, but not trying to make a value judgment at any level.
Yeah,
However,
and I think that's
yeah,
important
yeah.
to sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, 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 no.
But yeah, I think that's the important thing here is
Mm-hmm.
we're giving our opinions. We're not making like value judgments for any of you to base your assumptions or worldviews off of.
Yeah, yeah.
We're not speaking from a place of moral authority.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So we've kind of been dancing around something for a little while now, and I just want to kind of go ahead and approach it head on. So based on what we've been talking about already, I know that you were diagnosed with autism. Is that right?
That is correct, yes.
Yeah. And can you talk about when you were diagnosed, and maybe talk a bit about what that's been like for you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Great.
To be honest, I'm not exactly sure when I was first diagnosed.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I do remember being misdiagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder when I was in
Mm-hmm.
elementary school.
Mm-hmm.
I started having severe panic attacks and meltdowns, and my parents knew I had some sort of developmental thing going on as a child, and I was put through a bunch of tests for certain things.
Yeah.
But I don't ever really remember hearing the word autism said.
Okay.
And I don't personally think I realized that I was any different from a neurotypical child until I was already on my way to adulthood.
Mm-hmm. That's not
You know,
terribly uncommon, is it?
I can't really say.
Okay.
Um, I
No.
don't know. Maybe I was just a profoundly socially unaware kid. Maybe, that wouldn't be shocking.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but, when you're a child, you don't really have a concept of self yet in most cases, or even
Mm-hmm.
the world as a whole.
Yeah.
You're kind of just absorbing everything, cataloging stimuli and experiences, trying to make sense of what's going on around you with a brain that really isn't wired up for logical thought yet.
Yeah.
And one of the things that makes large brain mammals, like human beings, unique is that we're not born physically or mentally ready to survive on our own.
Mm-hmm.
There are very few animals that are completely ready to be self sufficient from birth, but humans require the better part of 2, maybe even 3 decades to reach a point where they're ready for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And though it might seem counterintuitive in a society that aggressively promotes uncompromising individualism, that's anathema to how we evolved as a species.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Altruism and cooperation and empathy aren't unique to human beings. There are dozens, maybe hundreds of other species that use those tactics to survive.
Yeah.
And if we were meant to be solitary creatures, there wouldn't be such things as loneliness epidemics, organized religion, or even civilization as a whole.
Yeah. I completely agree with you.
I'm getting I'm getting a little off track here, but I have a point.
No. No. Yeah. Go for it.
There's a point to it,
Okay.
and the point is that autism can be incredibly isolating.
Yeah.
For me, it only became more as I grew up, and I realized that in so many ways I wasn't like everyone else.
Yeah.
Due to the prevailing cultural influences at the time, I began to interpret this as there being something wrong with me.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have the language to describe how I felt or what I was going through, or to understand that I wasn't just some malformed, monstrous creature.
Mm-hmm.
And as I got older, I sought explanations through psychology. I developed a pretty debilitating anxiety disorder around the time I hit puberty, and was diagnosed with persistent depressive disorder in my teen years.
Mm-hmm.
But there wasn't a mental health condition that could fully explain what was quote unquote wrong with me.
Right.
I was 26 years old when a therapist suggested to me that I might be on the autism spectrum, and I really resented that.
Really?
I had I did, yeah. I have a lot of I really internalized that sort of ableist image of autism that permeates culture and society without even realizing it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I was around 28 that I finally started interrogating that bias and, accepted that sort of diagnosis and started using it as a framework to better understand myself and manage my health.
Mm-hmm. I love the way you phrase that you're using it as a framework, because I do think that understanding who we are, understanding the toolbox that we're approaching the world from, approaching our lives from, sometimes it truly is just kind of creating a new way to reframe our position within the world and our position within our personal society and culture.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It doesn't, it doesn't it's not necessarily world changing or like world shaking at the start, but it's something.
Yeah.
It's something to go off of. It's a foundation that you can build upon and
Mm-hmm.
to add to and take away from as you see fit. If we're continuing the sort of metaphor of like tools and construction here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm diagnosed with acute anxiety disorder among some other things, and I think for me, one of the things that I find very difficult about that is my own tendency to kind of explain away my feelings and my position within the world by saying, okay, well, I did that, and I'm going to explain it to myself by saying, well, that's because I have acute anxiety disorder, right? And that's something that I catch myself on a lot, because in the end, like, I'm still a person, right? I'm capable of making mistakes. I'm capable of doing things wrong. I'm capable of getting things wrong. And not everything can just be easily explained away by saying, well, I'm anxious. That's why, right?
Yeah, there's I've noticed a tendency in my generation in particular, but also in younger ones, to sort of use your pathology
Mm-hmm.
as an excuse or mitigating factor
Mm-hmm.
for the actions that you undertake,
Yeah. Yeah.
even if they don't really have much on the common. Like, look, if I'm a bad person, it's not because I have autism. It's because I'm a bad person.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
There
it,
can be
it
bad
doesn't
people with autism. That's definitely a thing that definitely happens.
Yeah, there can
Mm-hmm.
be bad people with any trait, and I think
Yes.
one, it shouldn't be used as an excuse because
Mm-hmm.
I don't think anybody really believes that anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's gonna really accept that if they interrogate it for more than 5 seconds and realize that we're not just slaves to instinct, but we are in fact capable of autonomy.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
And we're not going to get into Cartesian doubt because I fucking hate that.
Yeah.
Um, but
I'm gonna I'm gonna ping back to the chat for just a second. So I just want you to know that
yeah, go ahead.
Annika is telling you that you're not a monster, and I agree. You're definitely not. And then also DJ Wolf, I remember that my mom told me that she learned she had autism when DJ Wolf was a toddler, like 3 years old. So I think that's, I think it lends kind of support to this. I'm not going to call it a theory, but I think there's this trend lately that a lot of people are starting to decry for a lot of reasons, that people are being diagnosed with things like autism disorder later in life more frequently. And I don't think that that's some phenomenon. I think that's just we know more about the world now. We have learned more things about the world, and we're able to recognize these things. And finally, I'll just say, welcome in, Goldie. Welcome for the first time. So I'll spring it back to you, if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, you bring up a really good point, which I'll kind of go about in my usual rambling fashion here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But oftentimes there's a lot of evidence. Most of it is not, bona fide scientific fact yet, but there's a lot of evidence to suggest that autism can be genetic, and most people who have autism often have one or more autistic ancestors.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I don't want to talk too much about my family, but my dad is also on the spectrum, and
Mm.
that's kind of been a more recent realization and a thing that he started to embrace. But
Yeah.
he and I are an awful lot alike. I
Interesting.
didn't come from nowhere.
Interesting.
And
Interesting.
sometimes we'll sit around, we'll be like, "That's normal, right?" And then we like think about it, it's like, oh, if we both think it's normal, it's probably not normal.
I don't know how we're defining normal, but you know, it's
Yeah, I mean, okay, like what society would tell you is normal?
yeah,
I always
indeed.
think
I know I
this
see
is like,
my therapist once a month, and one of the things that always tends to come up with my therapy sessions is like, who defines should, right? Where does should come from? What is it that society tells us we should be doing? And let's just throw all of those things out of our life.
yeah,
Hmm.
because I mean, don't get me wrong, societal sure is compounding,
Hmm.
like we talked about, but at the end of the day, we still have the ability to choose how we interpret
Yeah.
what is sort of enculturated into us.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the right way to
Hmm.
conjugate that word,
Yeah. Makes sense.
but we have a choice to accept or reject the messages that are reinforced through societal means.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us, myself included, probably spent a lot of our lives just accepting them
Hmm.
because it's just easier.
Yeah. Yeah.
It takes a conscious effort to stop and look at all these ideas that you've picked up and be like, well, where the hell did I find that?
Hmm. Hmm.
And yeah, that's something I think all of us need to do because we all carry biases that we pick up from the people around us, from the things that we consume, from the cultures that we live in. And the more we take a step back and interrogate why we have a reaction to something, or like the way we react to something, how
Hmm.
something makes us feel, or why our response to a certain thing is like that, that you'll often find it's not even an idea that you consciously embraced. It's just something that seeped in.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm thinking about my own life, and I'm thinking about the prevalence of these should statements, and I'm just now realizing how the intersection between having anxiety disorder and feeling like you have to do what it is that society expects of you to follow the shoulds in the world, I think there's something really profound there. That, of course, I think that it's really important to do the things that society expects me to do because I have anxiety, right? And this is once again saying, like, here's the explanation for the way that I behave. But if you have anxiety, why wouldn't you be concerned all the time about whether or not you're allowed to say this way or do this way or what kind of clothes you're allowed to wear or anything like that? So that's getting way off
Exactly.
topic. Getting way off topic, and I'm talking about myself. But Annika has brought up something interesting, and I think it leads into my next question. So Annika says, "Doctor," in scare quotes, Asperger kind of messed up the diagnostic criteria for generations. And I think that's a really interesting way of looking at it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Um,
No, that's a really good point
yeah.
because you were talking about, just to circle back a little bit, the prevalence
Yeah.
of people being diagnosed as adults.
Mm-hmm.
There's some really interesting reasons for that.
Yeah.
And one such reason is because a couple versions of the DSM didn't even include criteria for
Mm-hmm.
autism.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
then a couple of them had criteria that were so broad that a lot of people were misdiagnosed.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It hasn't really been until the DSM-5 and then the ICR-11, which is kind of like the UN version of the DSM. It's what
Yeah.
sort of like an international standard in
Mm-hmm.
psychiatric medicine and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Came out that they acknowledged that it's the issue's a lot more nuanced
Yeah.
than
Yeah.
they've historically made it out to be,
Mm-hmm.
and sort of made moves towards. It's the same that they did with gender dysphoria, where they've
Absolutely.
made moves towards not pathologizing it as much.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely. Um, and I think this is a great place to talk about the history of autism. If you'd be interested in saying some stuff about that.
Yeah, that was one. You see, I got so lost in the sauce, creating talking points for other topics that I didn't really put as much effort into that one.
Sure, that's
But
perfectly fine.
we
Yeah,
can learn together.
absolutely, absolutely. Um,
All right.
I am
So
interested in knowing when the first diagnosis was.
that's a really good question.
Yeah, 1943.
Interesting.
Hmm. Originally described
I
the
just
condition as early infantile autism.
That's a
Yeah,
heck of a
right?
phrase.
Yeah, right?
I I see this meme floating around a lot, which
Mm-hmm.
really makes me laugh.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like there was an autism diagnosed before 1930, and it's like, well, Pluto wasn't discovered as a planet until 1930. So someone edited underneath it to say Pluto causes autism.
Fascinating.
It's so stupid, but it's so funny.
Hmm.
Uh,
I love it. I love it. Yeah, I'm just
and
looking
don't get me
through.
wrong, on paper, I love the idea of a celestial body causing some sort of, you know, change in the human condition, but
Yeah.
that's sort of relegated to the realm of fantasy.
And astrology. I said it. Don't cancel me.
Oh, you want to know my spiciest take?
Yeah, go for it.
All right, I'll give it to you. Myers-Briggs personality inventory, that's just astrology for people who don't believe in astrology.
Do you know about? Oh my gosh, what is the name of this? It's a Myers Briggs um, corollary, and it was created by the person who created Wonder Woman. Um,
Oh, William Moulton Marston.
yeah.
I love that guy.
He made a Myers Briggs type test, and I cannot for the life of me remember what it is. Oh, it's disc theory. Disc theory. So disc stands for dominance, inducement, submission, and compliance. Surprise.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so funny to me that his interest in femdom colored every single bit of his academic career.
Uh huh. Yep. I love it.
There's a really great biopic about his life called Dr. Marston and the Wonder Woman.
Oh, I'm gonna have to watch that.
Um, it's a really lovely film. I quite
Yeah.
enjoyed it. It's not um, his descendants, his like grandchildren at this point have said it's not necessarily the most accurate, but I'm like, you weren't even there. How the hell would you know? And I mean, it's Hollywood. They always change things.
Yeah, totally valid. Totally
But
valid.
yeah, I think it was directed by the same director who did The Miseducation of Cameron Post,
Okay.
which is another pretty dang good movie.
Mm, mm. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna have to check that out. It's funny because I actually am not a huge Wonder Woman fan. I love DC. Wonder Woman is just not my favorite.
Who is your favorite?
Uh, in DC, I mean, probably Dreamer at this point, just because I wish Dreamer had existed when I was like a little girl, because I really
Mhm.
needed a trans like superhero to really look up to. I really like Dreamer, but Oracle as well, especially like now as a disabled woman, I really vibe with Oracle, and I will never forget DC for just killing her off. It's unfair.
Yeah. No, I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
That kind of representation really, really matters.
Mm-hmm.
What got me back into superheroes, because I was a huge Spider-Man fan as a kid, and I
Yeah.
still really love Spider-Man,
Yeah.
like a lot. And I think the fun part about Spider-Man and just the character in general and how many different iterations of Spider-Man that there are
Mm-hmm.
is that anyone can become Spider-Man.
Yeah.
That's if the whole thesis of that, as stated explicitly by Stan Lee, is that it's like if you're one of the downtrodden masses, the vulnerable minorities, there's a
Mm-hmm.
spider person for you.
Yeah.
You can become that,
Yeah.
and you can do good, and you can be a hero.
And once again, I'm gonna get canceled, but that's exactly the reason that The Last Jedi is my favorite Star Wars movie, and I'm not taking notes at this time.
No, oh my God, that movie did so many things that I liked.
Yeah.
Um, I we don't need to Star Wars. That was one of my earliest special interests. It's still
Mm,
around. It has been going for like 24 years at this point.
I love it. I love
It's not going anywhere.
it.
Celeste and I bless her sweetheart. And I'm not gonna say that her positions aren't valid, but we have strongly differing views on Star Wars
Yeah.
and what we like about it. And I'm just gonna say it. I friggin' hate midichlorians.
Mm,
I think they're stupid.
yeah. Yeah.
I I think it takes all the mysticism out
Mm-hmm.
of the Jedi religion and the sort of notion that the Force is something that's used by everybody, whether or not they realize it. And some people just through discipline and intent learn how to be more sensitive to it and to
Yeah.
bend the universe around them to their will.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
I'll,
It's so cool. It's such a cool concept. And I was like, oh, it's not an ascribed thing. It's not like if I'm not born sensitive to the force, I can cultivate it. It doesn't matter.
mm, I'll just say that Rico seems to be on our side.
Oh no, I'm not. We're not taking sides. We're not taking sides.
Yeah,
We're
yeah,
not taking sides
yeah, 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 yeah,
for the sake of my professional relationship.
yeah. Mochino,
Um,
Mochino, of course, 100%. um,
yeah.
uh, yeah, Witch Hazel, I agree with you. If Omega had shown more force sensitivity, that would have been so good, so good. Yeah.
Oh man. So one of my best friends and I, when Omega happened,
Mm-hmm.
we were like, this implies some interesting things about Jango Fett
Yep.
from a real world science perspective.
Yep.
And we were like having a serious conversation about the possibility of Jango Fett being intersex.
Mm-hmm.
And then they just, they hand wave it away with space magic. But I'm like, wait, that's so much more interesting.
It really is. It really, really is. Super fascinating. But yeah. Um.
I do have some actual autism history here,
Okay.
if you'd
Yeah.
like some.
Yeah. Fire away.
All right. So, autism spectrum disorder might seem to be a fairly new condition, yet written evidence of existence can be found as far back as the 1700s.
Hmm.
The word autism was coined after the Latin word autismus in 1910 by the Swiss psychiatrist Eugene Buehler.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's how you say that. Buehler.
Bueller.
Buehler?
Bueller.
Buehler.
Bueller.
Save Ferris. Um, but I'm just going to call him Eugene.
Nice.
He had applied the word to describe schizophrenic symptoms
Mm-hmm.
rather than what we would call autism now.
Mm-hmm.
The Latin word was in turn derived from an earlier Greek word, autos, meaning self.
Mm.
It wasn't formally, it didn't take the shape of the modern condition until 1938, and it was given the name that Eugene had coined because of how people who are autistic have been observed to be solitary,
Yeah.
more inner focused, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Which I don't think that's necessarily true, but we can get to that later.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with you.
And then in 1938, this is when we get to Hans Asperger,
Mm-hmm.
who adopted the term, and I guess content warning if this bothers you, autistic psychopaths
Yeah.
to describe what he was researching, which later became known as Asperger's syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
Which, yeah, he was not a great guy.
No.
Not many people in the scientific establishment in the 30s in that part of Europe were, just putting that out there.
Mm-hmm.
In 1943, the psychiatrist from Johns Hopkins University, Leo Kanner, came along and made everything worse.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm editorializing. He used the term autism in the modern sense. He then created a new classification, which he called early infantile syndrome or Kanner syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
It came about during his observation of 11 children who had similar symptoms, who described them as acting with an autistic sameness,
Interesting.
which is, I guess, nicer than autistic psychopathy.
Yeah. Yeah.
But although Kanner is leagues better than Asperger was by virtue of not having the same political affiliation,
Yeah.
he wasn't exactly ahead of his time either.
Mm-hmm.
He postulated that autism was caused by sexism, basically.
Mm.
Basically, he was like, if you don't love your children enough, if you're not warm enough with them,
Yeah.
they're going to become autistic.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we got the term of cold and uncaring parenting styles being called refrigerator parenting.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, which now I'm just imagining like a smart fridge that becomes sentient and raises a kid. Netflix, get at me. That can be your next
Mm-hmm.
mid-budget sci-fi movie. But yeah, it wasn't until the 60s when people started realizing, hey, maybe sexism is bad.
Yeah.
And they started looking to causes other than the perceived failings of maternity
Yeah.
for um, where autism came from.
Absolutely.
But there's not a scientifically proven single cause of autism.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
there might be one day,
Yeah. Could be.
but there isn't yet.
Yeah. Um, just because I genuinely do not know, is it true that Asperger's syndrome has lately kind of become something that people are kind of shying away from talking about?
Yeah, because I mean, for a lot of reasons, the least of
Mm-hmm.
which being, the man who created it, basing it on bad science for worse means.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it was always a little bit pseudoscientific,
Yeah.
and there was a time when people used it to describe what they used to call more higher functioning autistic people,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um, which is also language that the establishment is shying away from now,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because that's kind of a rude thing to say.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's also there's not a clear delineation between what makes someone high functioning or low functioning. The
Mm-hmm.
language that they're using now moves more towards the amount of support a person requires in specific circumstances.
Interesting. Interesting.
And autism is it's really personalized. I myself have a combination of high support and low support needs, and that's kind of the case for a lot of people
Okay.
who are on the spectrum. Some people have all high needs, some people have all low needs, and but most people don't fit that binary and kind of land somewhere in the between.
I really want to come back to this point. I really, really want to talk to this more, but I just very quickly want to talk about DJ Wolf has a question here. So the question is, do I know
Yeah,
about synesthesia? And it's something that I know about, but I don't. I couldn't give like an accurate definition off the top of my head.
it's that software program that makes the piano keys go do 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 do.
Oh, okay. Um,
No, I'm kidding. That's not what it.
yeah,
That's not what
yeah.
it is.
Um, yeah, synesthesia is
Um,
something causing you to feel something based on stimulation from other parts of your body.
yeah,
Yeah.
the most common type that we hear about is like auditory synesthesia.
Mhm. Mhm.
You hear a lot about people who associate certain sounds, noises, musical cues with like visuals or feelings or sensations, other sensations.
Yes. Yeah.
I There is a bit of correlation between synesthetic responses and autism spectrum disorders. They're not
Interesting.
exclusive.
Interesting.
I have a bit of that myself. Um I was listening to a song earlier today and I can only really describe it the music of it is that it just felt like sharp and pointy,
Ah. Okay.
metallic even, and it wasn't like metal music and it
Yeah.
wasn't I didn't have any visual to go off of, but it felt like sharp and pointy and metallic.
Interesting.
And that's not unusual. I mean, I will associate certain, um, musically speaking, I'll associate certain like keys or tones with certain sort of like colors or sensations, like whether
Mhm.
something's pointy
Mhm.
or it's flat, whether
Mhm.
it's round, angular, soft, harsh.
Yeah.
Um, music journalists and art critics use a lot of that type of language to
Mhm.
describe like a person's vocal performance or
Okay.
the structure they employ when creating a composition.
Okay.
Um, but I don't think many of them experience it the same way.
Mhm.
Like,
Mhm.
I don't think most people will have just can be primed with an auditory cue and be like, that feels pointy.
Okay. Um. I really want to come back to high and low support because I'm very interested in
Yeah,
this given my history. But before I do, another very off topic question. Do you ever listen to
yeah.
noise music? Are you familiar with that?
Um, what kind of noise we talking? I know there's lots of different subgenres.
um,
Like, are we talking harsh noise, industrial noise, ambient?
Yeah, no, I'm thinking mostly about industrial noise, just the idea that there's music out there that isn't music, right? That there's nothing musical about it. It's just a collection of sounds that are not put together in a way that create music in any way, shape, or form. Just like a cacophony, right? It's something that I'm super interested in. Very off topic.
Yeah, I guess I'd sort of categorize that more in like the sort of like music concrete type
Mm-hmm.
of
Mm-hmm.
movement, stuff
Yeah.
that tries to be like avant-garde.
Yeah.
Um, there's definitely music that doesn't employ like traditional like structures or tonalities, scales,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
rhythms, anything like that. I mean, even in music, I think of jazz a lot as an example, like the
Yeah.
various different schools of thought on that, and like um, you know, syncopated jazz really entered the mainstream consciousness. I mean, we associate that pretty heavily with like the 20s, 30s, and 40s, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
swing and big band and like the jazz influences that were coming in. And then you have that, you have like, what's the difference between Glenn Miller and John Coltrane? I mean, a hell of a lot, but um,
Sure. I
the
have no
main
idea.
difference there is, oh, Glenn Miller was a very famous conductor of
Okay.
swing and big band music. I'm almost positive you've heard Moonlight Serenade at some point. It was
Mm.
even in an episode of Doctor Who.
Oh, okay, cool.
It's the song that Rose and Jack danced to on his invisible spaceship
Ah,
in the "Are You My Mummy" episode
yeah,
with the Ninth Doctor.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, but then at the other end of the spectrum, you have like Pharoah Sanders and John Coltrane, who are very much in the improvisational camp,
Mm-hmm.
and that's tends to be more my favorite kind of jazz. I like that it's unpredictable. I'm also a
Mm-hmm.
big Kamzai Washington fan because he's a fantastic musician, and I really enjoy the stuff that he's doing. His interpretation of Claire de Lune is one of my favorite modern jazz
Oh,
songs.
interesting. Interesting. Hmm.
It's gorgeous.
Nice. Um, so I'm sending you a good day message from DJ Wolf, who has to leave us, and I also welcome in everybody who's coming in now. Thank you all for
Yeah,
being here. But let's go back to high and low support, if you don't mind, because I want to know more about this. Because as I think you know, I used to work at a respite camp for people who, what at the time we were classifying as low functioning autism. But I guess
yeah,
now I'm thinking that we would reclassify that as high support, that people who needed just significant amounts of support.
yeah. No,
Okay,
that's exactly the intent with that language.
awesome. I like that. I like that a lot. I definitely learned
It
something
feels a
today.
lot. It feels a lot better, doesn't it?
It does.
Instead of just being like, "Oh, you're so freaking needy," it's like we're gonna work together to give you the help that you need,
Yeah, yeah. Um,
and it's okay that you need that.
hmm Yeah. We all have
But
different
yeah,
needs, and I think that's really, really, really extremely important. There's so many people that I look back at my time being a respite coordinator and providing support that just like touched my heart for lack of a better way of saying it, and this sounds incredibly derogatory, and I don't mean it to sound derogatory at all, but they touched my heart with their weirdness, right? And I just like loved that. That I just had so many campers or clients that I was working with as a respite coordinator that just had this like so superbly unique way of looking at the world, and I want to shy away from saying like our uniquenesses or our diagnoses kind of make us special or superhuman, because I think that that's also incredibly fraught, right? But I just loved the way that some of my clients looked at the world. I thought it was so cool. um, I'll just
no,
provide I'll just provide a
I
very
was gonna
quick
say,
example that I
yeah,
had.
go ahead.
I had one camper who loved soda more than anything in the world, and ostensibly he really wasn't supposed to have it. But if a soda can was opened anywhere in the camp, he knew where it was and he was making a beeline towards it, and it was kind of amazing.
That is absolutely hilarious. And I love that for him, and I will always give him soda. I
Yeah,
don't care.
yeah.
The heck with the establishment.
Indeed, indeed.
My
um,
man's needs his soda.
yeah. So I think I wanted to shift gears a little bit and talk about the misconceptions around autism. I wonder if you could talk about maybe some of the misconceptions and some of the harm that those misconceptions have done. We've already talked about some of them. We've talked about quite a few of them, but is there anything else there that you want to touch on?
Oh yeah, this is one that I actually spent a lot of time on.
Nice.
Um, so I'd say the one misconception that's probably caused the most damage is the alleged link between vaccines and autism.
Yeah.
And I'm just gonna say it right now, that's complete fucking bullshit.
Yep.
There is no reliable scientific evidence that autism is caused by childhood vaccinations.
Mm-hmm.
There's one study that people sometimes point to as proof, but that study was complete jank.
Yeah.
It's been completely discredited. It never should have been published in the first place. The people who did it even renounced it.
Mm-hmm.
And since then, there have been large scale studies on vaccination and autism, and every single one of them has not found a goddamn scrap of evidence to support a link between the two.
Yeah.
But for the love of all that's good in the world, get your fucking vaccinations and vaccinate your damn kids. We've seen fresh outbreaks of diseases that we've spent decades trying to eradicate because of the harm that they can do to children.
Yep. Yeah.
All right, I'll kick my soapbox to the side now.
Well, I guess what I want to know is where that's coming from and why it has been used as such an incredible talking point to, I have to say, as much as I hate admitting it, it's been used to great effect on the right.
Oh yeah.
Without like, I don't want to get too political, but let's just be honest and call a spade, right? We have this group of people who are saying, if you get vaccinated for COVID, you're going to end up catching the autism. Like, where does this come from, and why does it exist?
Well, I can't say for certain, but I think it probably does come from the same like pseudoscientific touchdown that we have here.
Mm-hmm.
But I think a lot of it, if I'm gonna put on my political theorist hat here, I think a
Sure.
lot of it, a lot of things that you see with sort of groupthink behavior
Mm-hmm.
is getting people to accept small things that aren't necessarily true.
Mm-hmm.
Getting they can hold that contradictory thought in their head even in the face of evidence and believe it.
Yeah.
And that's how you prime people to believe bigger and bigger lies, basically.
Yeah.
You see this in political movements. I think a lot about cults of personality around dictators, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's a common touchstone. I mean, whether it was like Stalinism in Russia, Juche in North Korea, or what went on in Albania,
Mm-hmm.
um, there's this whole, narrative. It's like where it's like you have to sort of accept these contradictory ideas. It's like the world is crumbling around you, but everything's better than it's ever been because this ideology is winning.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think really it's just about getting people to accept more and more outlandish ideas.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you see that in like bona fide cults too.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, there's a TED talk that I really, really like, and this particular TED talk is on how to start a movement, right? And the
Hmm.
entire TED talk is kind of showing the idea of the lone nut, right? The lone nut is the first person to start doing a thing, and then other people see that thing and they develop a sense of FOMO, right? Where they go, oh my gosh, that person is doing a weird thing. And then there's this weird tipping point where it's like that individual who's doing something very, very different, very out there, starts amassing followers, and at some point you kind of make the decision from an outside point of view of saying, if I don't get on this train now, by the time I get on the train will be something that I don't want to be a part of, right? And so I think there's something to be said about catching people in small numbers with these kind of conspiracy theories and taking them to a place that ends up becoming almost dangerous simply because it became so big.
Yeah, and history has proven time and time again that there are altruistic actors
Mm-hmm.
who, you know, are doing the weird thing and being the sort of like, sort of like the nail that sticks out,
Yeah. Yeah.
to rather point to use a rather culturally appropriate phrase
Mm-hmm.
given our
Mm-hmm.
everything we've talked about.
Yeah.
But then
I
there are bad actors too who see that and then can use that to their advantage.
Yeah, I'm led to believe that that's actually how the flat earther movement got its start. That if I understand correctly, the first flat earthers were people who were saying it as satire, right? Of course this is not true. And then people jumped on the bandwagon and somehow believed the thing that was intended to be a lie from the beginning.
Yeah, it was an idea. People have this idea that sort of like ancient peoples thought that the world was flat, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Pretty much none of them thought that.
Right, yeah.
The Greeks knew for a fact that it was round. They measured it with mathematics. They
Yeah.
figured it out and they even calculated the size of the planet to
Mm-hmm.
a stunningly accurate number with almost no data to
Yeah.
go upon.
Yeah.
It's really impressive.
Mm-hmm.
The idea didn't really take off again. I don't remember when, but it was sort of just in conjunction with sort of like modern like esoteric, contrarian, and like anti-intellectual movements.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we've once again kind of gotten a little bit off topic. Were there any other misconceptions you wanted to touch on before we move on?
Yeah.
Okay.
So vaccines and flat Earth aside,
Yeah.
I do have to do my little bit here before we continue.
Yeah, by all means.
I think everyone needs to double down.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to believe one Earth conspiracy theory, you should believe all of them.
Mm-hmm.
Believe in a flat, hollow Earth.
Yeah.
The
Oh,
Earth is flat and also hollow, and you can't trust anyone on this flat, hollow Earth.
and also it's riding on the back of some turtles or something.
Ah, Discworld, my beloved.
I still need to engage with it. Somebody give me the
One of
cliff notes,
my
please.
one of my favorite just little bits of lore from that series is the reason that Earth, which exists somewhere else in the universe, is specifically so miserable
Mm-hmm.
is because there's no magic there.
Mm, super
Like the
valid.
universe is just full of magic and wonder and all this fantastical stuff happening, and Earth just sucks because oops, missed a spot.
Yeah.
And that's never not funny to me.
Yeah. Also, Tsubaki Lines says that they believe in the conspiracy theory that everything is going to be okay. I want to believe.
Me too.
You know, I
Um,
want to believe is actually a really great segue into my next question.
all right, what you got for me?
I'm going to rephrase this question actually from the way that I phrased it originally, and I'm going to say this. Has there ever been a valid representation in pop culture of an individual with autism? Has that ever existed before?
Yeah, I spent a lot of time on this one too.
Okay, okay.
So there are precious few confirmed autistic characters in pop culture outside of
Mm-hmm.
like films that are explicitly dedicated to exploring the topic, like The Boy Who Could Fly or Rain Man. I think everybody knows Rain Man.
Yeah.
Um, but there are a lot of characters in pop culture who are very autistic coded.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I could sit here and list the issues I have with well known examples. And I did at one point threaten to rant about the American version of The Good Doctor for 5 hours.
Yeah.
Um, but I think, in the interest of kindness and positivity, I'd actually rather talk about one that I think is well done.
Yeah.
And it's one that y'all might know. It's Abed Nadir from Community.
Oh, I don't know this one.
Oh, Community, it's lovely. It's a sitcom about people at a community college.
Oh, okay.
It was written by Dan Harmon, and the first few seasons are really, really good. It kind of gets, I'm not as into it after some of the original cast leaves,
Mm-hmm.
but Abed, who's played by Danny Pudi, who I'm sure you've all seen in other things, he's a fantastic actor. I find the character of Abed to be a really good example of someone with a mix of different autistic traits.
Okay.
Um, because unlike a lot of characters who are on the spectrum, he's in touch with his emotions. He's allowed to be
Mm,
empathic and caring and emotionally available. He
interesting.
gets to cultivate deep and meaningful relationships with this sort of group of other misfits that he finds himself with by circumstance.
Mm,
And I also really, one of the things I really like about him is that his special interest isn't related to science, mathematics, or medicine like a lot of autistic characters are.
mm-hmm.
He's he's a film buff. His special interest
Oh,
is an encyclopedic knowledge of pop culture, and
that's
he
so
uses
cool.
his special interest as fuel for his career because he's a film student. He wants to become a filmmaker.
Ah, that's really neat.
It's really cool. You don't often see characters like that who are more inclined towards like I forget, is that the right brain side, the creative one,
Yeah.
or is that the left brain? I don't remember.
Right, right,
Yet another piece of
right brain is
yeah,
creative, isn't it? I think.
I don't know, it's all pseudoscientific crap,
Yeah, that's
but
true.
is the corpus callosum a joke to you?
uh, Witch Hazel is bringing up Laos Tauden. I don't know how to pronounce his name.
Laios.
Laos.
Oh
Okay,
my
my
god.
bad. My bad.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, Laios Tudin from Delicious in Dungeon or Dungeon Meshi. He's another one that I really, really love. And again, the creator, um, Ryoko Kui, she never outright says the word,
Mm-hmm.
but she's, I swear to God, she has said it in every other way that she can. that, that Laios has some sort of um, autism spectrum disorder because he's another really well-rounded and wonderful character because he finds himself the leader of this, another band of misfits and despite the fact that he has really poor social skills, but throughout the series, there are people who he has wronged or in the past without even realizing it due to that, or people who have vastly different ideas of the person he is based on what they've heard, and he mends those relationships. They find common ground and they find respect, and he finds people who share his interests. I mean, the character of Senshi
Hmm.
is very much interested in the whole. Um, Spoiler alert: the show's about eating monsters.
Okay.
Senshi's also very much interested in that, and he is also an outsider from his culture. He was ostracized and um, kind of victimized throughout his life too, to the extent that the man willingly lives alone in a hostile underground dungeon
Huh.
because he can just be himself there
Hmm.
without having to deal with societal pressure.
Interesting. Um, I cannot believe that I haven't seen this show. I'm going to have to add Dungeon Mesh to my my must watch because I've just learned for the first time. How did I not know this? But Dios is voiced by Damien Haas. Like, what?
Yes,
How did this happen?
it's oh my god, the American dub, the English dub is so good. You have Damien Haas as Laios, you have Sungwon Cho
Oh,
um, as Senshi, and
oh,
he does a great job.
that's so cool.
Um, what's also funny is uh, people know that Celeste and I are big fans of the game Destiny 2.
Hmm.
We played a lot of that. It was really important to our relationship in the early days.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but one of the characters in that is also the narrator in the English dub. And
Ah.
it fits because the character that actor voices in Destiny 2 is known for eating things that most people consider to not be traditional sources of food.
Interesting. Hmm. That's very cool.
But yeah,
Yeah.
I love that show. I love the manga. I have a few volumes of it that I was gifted. I have some of the supplemental books. I really want to get my hands on all of it
Oh, that's so cool.
because the show is great. It's animated by Studio Trigger, and I'm a huge fan of pretty much anything that they animate.
Mm-hmm.
But the manga is just so lovingly drawn. It's wonderful. Uh, she's Ryoko Kui is a freaking master. She's chef's kiss. She has all these like little bonus sections of material where she talks about her process and like does all these other sketches, and it's so good.
That's so neat. That's so neat. Tsubaki Line says, maybe it's just the fact that I'm playing Sonic Unleashed on my Steam Deck right now, but I can't help but also think about characters autistic people that are just naturally drawn to. So certain characters that autistic people are
Yeah,
very interested in.
yeah, and I think that's really valid. I mean, a lot of people have comfort characters, right? I
Yeah.
mean, we see that a lot in fandom.
It
Um,
like your Blorbo, nah?
my Blorbo.
Yeah. Do
I
people?
just like the concept of it, or are you talking about my Blorbo,
No, no,
my
no, no, no,
personal
no. I
Blorbo?
mean anybody's. Like I just love that as a term.
Yeah, me too. I
Yeah.
think about that one Tumblr post where someone's like, my grandma asked what a Blorbo was, and when I explained it, she's like, oh, I guess my Blorbo's Wile E. Coyote.
Whoa! I love that. I love that.
It's great.
um, I know I personally have a favorite all time autism coded character, and I suspect it's probably not who you think it is.
I'm deeply curious.
It's Worf.
No, that actually makes perfect
Uh
sense.
huh. Yeah. Yeah. Um, definitely an outsider. Definitely very, very, very much like special interest. His special interest is his own culture, which I freaking love. I think that's so cool.
I know, and he's obsessed with it to the extent that it even alienates him from
Mm-hmm.
like other Klingons.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. A couple other comments here. So, like, Sonic has a strong attachment to a lot of autistic people for a number of reasons. I've seen many video essays about this very topic. I think that's really cool. The Sonic lore
Yeah,
to me is so interesting because, much like Batman, Sonic is my least favorite part of the Sonic universe.
you know, I think somewhere Belkis just cheered. Um,
Shadow's best so much.
yeah,
We love Shadow.
she is Shadow's strongest advocate, and that's impressive.
I love it. I
No, I
love
think
it.
we all love Shadow. I mean, if you have a heart, you love Shadow because of
Mm-hmm.
like his story. Yeah, he's a cartoon hedgehog who wears running shoes and carries a gun and rides a motorcycle, but his story is deeply human.
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
And I remember people like razzing Keanu for saying that, like how he completely understood the character
Mm-hmm.
of Shadow.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm like, if anybody would, he would.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Surrounded is back from karate. What gossip did I miss? Well, we didn't do any real gossip exactly, but we are talking about autism spectrum disorders, and we're having a really really great, wonderful conversation about it. So, um,
I always really like Tails. Tails is probably my favorite,
yeah,
just
uh,
because I was like, oh, you have like one interest, and that's just working on all your gadgets and stuff, and
yeah,
you're just a good-natured little critter.
yeah, yeah. Uh, my, I'm like weirdly doxing myself in a strange way, but my brother had a dog growing up whose name was Miles, and that dog was named after Tails.
That's really cute.
Yeah, yeah. So, all right. Should we move on,
Um,
or did you have more to
well,
say?
I do have a little
Okay,
more to say on the
okay.
topic of representation.
Yeah, go for it. Go for it, please, by all means.
So, okay. So this is another one of my spicy takes, so be warned.
Awesome. I'm ready for it.
All right. I kind of really don't like media featuring protagonists whose autism makes them the best in their field or
Mm-hmm.
exceptional in some way.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It just feels really freaking cynical to me.
Mm-hmm.
Like the idea that there exists a useful kind of autism that capitalism can exploit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and not to sound like a raging socialist, but hey, you, person in the audience, hey chat, hey you, your worth as a human being is not based on the monetary value your labor can provide anybody.
Yeah.
That is objectively true regardless of your opinions about economics or politics. You are worth more than what you can provide in value to other people.
Mm-hmm.
But nevertheless, I know there's a lot of people who find these types of characters important.
Yeah.
Autism is really, really personalized, and
Mm-hmm.
so is popular media.
Yeah.
Not every autistic person is the same, just like every single trans woman doesn't have the same lived experiences.
Mm-hmm.
It's ridiculous to think that we can boil something as complex as a human being down to a handful of arbitrary traits.
Yeah.
And I'd like to say that just because these characters that I described don't work for me personally, if they work for you or for someone else, hell yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I support that. More power to you.
So
Your mileage may vary.
I almost feel like I need paper because I've just kind of like worked something out. I've worked out a triangle in my head that I've only just now thought of, right? And I
Yeah,
think that this is kind of profound. Not that I want to toot my own horn and say, "Oh, I figured something out that's profound," but I'm going to talk very, very briefly about this little triangle. So, from my perspective, when a trans woman, in general, is portrayed in media, we tend to be portrayed as either dangerous or the butt of a joke, right?
yeah. Or sex workers.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Um,
Those are like the 3 points of the triangle.
and then we have people with DID or OSDD disorders. That's hard for me to say. I stayed on the D too long. Um, and people with
Dual.
dual, um, people with DID type disorders tend to be portrayed as either dangerous or superhuman.
Yeah,
And people with autism tend to be portrayed as either the butt of the joke or superhuman. But I don't know of any examples where somebody with autism is necessarily portrayed as dangerous.
I think I could probably dig something up if you left me far enough. There's a lot of autistic coded villains,
Yeah.
and probably some explicitly autistic villains.
Mm, you're
And,
probably
hey,
right.
I always say, I support trans rights, but I also support trans wrongs.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Valid. Valid.
but yeah, no, you touched on DID and other such
Mm,
conditions. If there
mm-hmm.
is a group that is more maligned
Yeah.
in pop culture, I am hard pressed to find who it is.
Mm-hmm.
What's that movie? Like Split or
Split.
whatever?
Split. Yeah.
I hate that movie with the passion.
You know.
If the word hate was printed on each nano angstrom of all
Mm-hmm.
the circuits in my complex, it would not equal one billionth of the hate I feel for that movie in this instant.
That movie is so tragic to me because I'll just be completely forthright and say James McVoy has been my celebrity crush for a very, very, very long time, and I don't feel okay thinking that he's attractive anymore.
You're so real for that. I'm not
Yeah.
gonna lie. I first was like, oh, he ain't bad when he was in all that fawn makeup for Chronicles of Narnia.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's probably because he was in the fawn makeup. Let's be real. Um,
I mean, he was also really great as Leto the Second. Just saying, he made a great sandworm.
oh, you're so right.
Yeah. Um, a couple comments that we have here. I feel like I'm trans, and there's certain experiences I feel like I don't relate to, like crippling dysphoria. Yeah, be trans the way you want to be trans. Be trans the way you experience it. There's no right or wrong way to be trans. Just like there's no right or wrong way to be anything else. Um, the cis
Yeah.
heteronormative structure is always going to frame trans people through the lens of how sexy they are. I think that
Yeah,
that's awful. Um,
it is. It's all about one, it's about how assimilated you can be.
yeah,
And then one about it's completely predicated on your desirability
yeah.
in light of, and this is a really misunderstood term, but your desirability under the male gaze.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep.
If you're not a perfectly perfectly feminine and fuckable trans woman,
yeah. Yeah.
you don't have a right to exist, is
Mm-hmm.
the message.
Yeah. Subaki Linus is also bringing up Syndrome from The Incredibles as an example of an autistic villain, or autistic coded,
Oh
I should
yeah.
say. Um,
No, you're so right.
yeah.
His special interest is Mr. Incredible.
Yep. Yep. Um,
Damn, Bob, why'd you have to be such a jerk to that little autistic boy?
um, yeah, and Witch Hazel is bringing up Sheldon Cooper as a negative lens on the idea of autism, which is also very, very, very true.
You know, I wasted some time ranting about him and Temperance Brennan from Bones before I cut that part. I I I cannot stand The Big Bang Theory. I think it's one of the most obnoxious television programs ever made.
yeah. Um,
I'd rather watch fucking Barney and Friends, and I hate Barney and
oh
Friends.
no, poor Barney. What did Barney ever do to you?
I don't hate Barney. I liked him as a kid. I just find him insufferable as an adult. I can't put up with that. It's
yeah.
like how I liked Jar Jar as a kid, but now I'm just kind of cringe a little bit.
Okay, you know what? Interesting. I'm the opposite.
You got okay. I'm talking about like outside of the Clone Wars show. He got some justice for himself
yeah,
there,
yeah, that's true. I don't know.
but
I'm
just
an
as he's
episode one
portrayed in the first
reclaimer.
movie, makes
Yeah,
no. You got rights.
yeah,
Celeste really loves that movie too.
yeah.
I just it's just I think maybe to paraphrase Doctor Who again.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe sometimes George needs somebody to stop him.
Yes, 100%, 100%.
Um, and
Um,
every writer's only as good as their editor. Let's be real.
George Lucas,
It's
in my humble opinion, and this is a controversial statement, I think George Lucas is one of the best world builders that has ever existed. He's
mhm.
just really, really bad at directing movies.
No, I would strongly agree, and I think you can see that throughout his other non-Star Wars output too,
Mm-hmm.
like THX 1138.
Ah, so good.
It explores it's really good and it
Yeah,
explores
it's
some
really
really
good.
interesting ideas, but it kind of is George,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
Love or
Um,
hate the guy, it's George.
my weird connection with THX 1138 is that THX 1138, some sound from that movie is sampled in a Nine Inch Nails song, and that is like
Yeah,
it is my song. I love that song so much.
yeah, and you fed strawberries to Trent Reznor once.
Yes, I did. I did. That is a true
I
thing.
remember that story.
I didn't literally feed the man, but I was just like,
Let me imagine it that
here's
way. It's
some
better.
strawberries. Okay, I allow it. I allow it.
I'm just it's so much funnier to me to imagine you're just like feeding them to him like he's some sort of like Dionysian cult member, and your job is to like put chocolate covered strawberries in his mouth.
One of the coolest things that Trent Reznor ever did, and once again, look at us getting off topic. Did you know that Trent Reznor released an album in a bathroom? Do you know about this story?
I don't think I did.
He dropped an album just by leaving flash drives containing the entire album in bathrooms where he was having shows. Like he would just go in the bathroom, leave a flash drive somewhere in the bathroom, and somebody would find it and be like, "Oh, I have the new Nine Inch Nails album."
Oh, I love that.
Uh
I
huh.
love the idea of that.
Uh huh. Yeah.
That's that's so cool. And everyone's like, "Yeah, bet, dump it," and then they do, and they're like, "Holy shit, you weren't bluffing."
Yeah. Yeah.
And then he's just sitting there watching Reddit go ape shit, presumably,
Turn music into
exactly
an
as I
ARG.
planned. You know, a lot of bands try, and a lot of them fail at it.
Yeah.
There's only one other group that I can think of that did that successfully.
Who's that?
KFC Murder Chicks.
Oh, I don't know this band.
I found them because a song of theirs was featured in one of the haunted PlayStation demo discs.
Oh, interesting. Interesting.
But yeah, they did a whole. I'll send you a video on that too.
Okay.
There's a whole ARG that they did with through like 4chan and Reddit, and it actually paid off. It worked. Everyone connected the dots.
Very cool.
People watch it all the time. Pink Floyd absolutely blew it back in the 90s.
Interesting. I don't know this story either.
Yeah, the Publius Enigma.
I don't know what that is.
There's a whole. That's Pink Floyd's botched marketing campaign from the 90s.
It sounds like a disease. It sounds like a horrible disease.
Yeah, it kind of does.
um,
I've been diagnosed with Publius Enigma.
I can't find it anywhere.
What's so funny about Publius Enigma?
I can't help it. If you're comfortable moving on, we've kind of moved into the next topic anyway. So, the next question that I was going to ask you is, what got you into music?
Oh, that's a great question. It was probably my parents. I mean, my dad has a background in music and band and performing arts in general. He was a pretty serious amateur theater actor when he was in his 20s.
Cool.
And he just constantly, I don't want to say exposed, I was just like barraged with music when I was growing up.
That's so cool.
And all different kinds. He's very, I describe myself as musically omnivorous. I've never met a genre that I don't like. There's always something for me there.
Yeah.
And I'll listen to anything from like 12th century Gregorian chants to like 100 gex. I'm not particular.
Valid.
I really love Gregorian chants. There's just something so peaceful. Yeah, it was that relentless torrent of exposure to music, like pretty much all the pop music of the 20th century, ranging back from like the dawn of recorded music to what was then contemporary, the 90s and early 2000s. It was never not a part of my life. I remember when I got my first tape player when I was a kid. And I remember when I got it was like a boombox style one. It did CDs and cassettes, and it had like the big old speakers. And I remember the first CD I ever was given, and you're gonna laugh at this.
Yeah.
It was a copy of Smash Mouth's album Astro Lounge, best known for the hit single All Star.
AKA the Shrek song.
Yeah. What was his name? I don't remember the frontman's name, but rest in peace to that guy. He was actually a cool dude.
Yeah.
He's the Guy Fieri of rock music. And I mean that in all the positive ways, because Guy Fieri is actually a pretty decent human being. But yeah, that was the first CD I was ever given. I think the ones after that, one was a Beach Boys album. I don't remember which one. I got that for Christmas when I was 6. And then when I was 7, I was given, because I was always taking my dad's Beatles CDs, because I was really obsessed with the Beatles when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Probably an early special interest. I was like 30 years too late to that fandom. I was very devastated to learn that there were only 2 of them left. Yeah. So the CD that I was given that Christmas was a copy of Magical Mystery Tour,
Mm,
which is still one of my favorite Beatles albums.
yeah.
My brother was given a copy of Sgt. Pepper, and I just took that because he wasn't that interested in it.
Mm,
But yeah, I
very
was
cool.
really into the Beatles and the Beach Boys, and I still really like both of those groups.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, it's kind of like a cliche among um, people who are into music seriously that it's like, oh, Beach Boys' Pet Sounds, but that album is amazing.
Yeah.
It's immaculately produced.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to think
And it,
for myself, like I don't know. I can't help it. I think of Beach Boys and I think of Lana Del Rey. Like there's just this connection there for me. But
you know, on paper, you'd think that I would be like the target market for being a Lana Del Rey fan, right? I can't stand that woman.
that's valid. Nothing wrong with
I
that.
I do not like her music.
She is
Um,
shockingly like, especially recently, a lot of her music has been very, very, very marketed towards incredibly high class people.
yeah, which is just weird to me.
Yeah, I
No,
agree.
I'm like, if we're talking about musical acts of the last, 10 or so years that I've found incredibly relatable and have touched my life,
Mm-hmm.
Ethel Cain. Absolutely Ethel Cain.
Interesting.
She's what Lana Del Rey wishes she was. She's Americana, but like the sort of like red earth, blue collar,
Mm-hmm.
utter poverty kind of Americana.
Mm, yeah.
And quite frankly, that's more what my experience in this country has looked like.
Yeah.
She's also a trans woman, Ethel Cain.
That's so
Um,
cool.
just a really fascinating individual. Um, she's just cool. I
Yeah.
really like her. I love her music. It's incredibly depressing, but in a really good way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, uh, absolutely lovely. I hope to get to see her perform live one day.
Yeah, that'd be very cool. Do you have
I'm
thoughts
also a
on
big. Hmm?
Do you have thoughts on Kim Petras?
I. I'm gonna tell you something that Celeste will hate me for.
Okay.
That was the first girl she ever had a crush on. Yeah. No, I love Kim Petras. I think she's great. I
Yeah.
like some of her songs, but I'm not really like a. Um, I don't listen to. Well, that's not even true. It's just, I don't listen to a lot of club music. Let's put it like that.
Valid. Valid. Yeah.
Left to my own devices, I won't do that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the period of my life where I was even going to clubs, it was usually goth clubs or on goth nights.
Yeah. I think I
Trouble in a
was. I.
different way.
I'm sorry. I didn't hear what you just said.
Oh, I said I'm insufferable in a different way
Oh.
because I was really into like the.
I was never
Yeah.
going to. I was never really going to like goth clubs, but there was a club that I used to go to all the time that was a goth club, goth club in the basement, and then like a DJ in the first floor, and then the top floor was punk club. And I was going for the punk band, and then when the punk band was gone, I was going down to the rave on the first floor, right? And that's really like where I found rave music, where I was really like
Hmm.
learning about trance, learning about jungle, etc. But I really like showed up for the punk show, and I was just like very much a little punk girl.
That's really funny to me because there was a long period of my life where I was very involved in the punk music scenes in both the Bay Area and Los Angeles.
That's so cool.
I'm a California native in more ways than one, actually. I'm like um, legitimately native Californian, not like I was just, oh, I'm an American who was born here. I have like native Californian ancestry.
That's so cool.
Um, it is cool. I found that out fairly recently. The lame part about that is we're not part of a tribe that has federal recognition,
Huh. Interesting.
which means you don't get any of the benefits. Yeah. That's a whole other rabbit hole I could go down.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not gonna tell you guys which Native American group my family's from because that information could probably dox me.
Yeah. Let's not do that.
But
Let's not do that.
yeah, let's not do that. I mean,
Yeah.
I'd love to tell you, but there's just so few of that particular group of people left that it would be really easy to figure out who I was. So I'm not gonna do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Please don't do that. I think that actually lends itself really well to the next topic that I wanted to talk about, which was
Yes.
intersectionality. Yeah.
Yeah.
So like, I wonder if you can talk about how autism spectrum disorders interact with either your or just other cultural identities in general.
Sure. Well, I know we talked about sort of the unwillingness of East Asian cultures in particular to
Mm-hmm.
acknowledge things like autism or even just mental illness in general.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Excuse me. That's also fairly common for more conservative Latin American cultures and families.
Mm-hmm.
In addition to being Native American, I'm like everybody else in America. An amalgam of things.
Yeah.
Um, I am uh, Mexican and German mostly.
Okay.
Not unlike Frida Kahlo, who is
Mm.
one of my favorite human beings to ever live.
Yeah.
And I like her because a lot of people, there's this whole narrative around her. People either like her because of like the tragic genius archetype or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, like oh, she was so talented but so frail, so delicate. And I'm like, she would have slugged you for saying that.
That's perfect.
She took no prisoners. She gave zero fucks, and she lived life on her own terms in a time when it was not easy for a queer, disabled Mexican woman to do that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's why she's so important to me.
Yeah.
I was fortunate enough when I was 17 to go to the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art and see an exhibition of her works,
Oh.
and not just like the finished paintings, but her sketches as well.
Oh, that's so cool.
It was like seeing the face of God in a way. I know it sounds crazy, but it was like that. It was like a revelation. It was like an angel
Hmm.
manifesting or something.
Interesting.
To just, or maybe a better analogy is like a pilgrimage to see a holy relic. It's like
Yeah.
it's proof that the person who made this work of art lived in the presence of it. That it was indelibly marked, intentionally and unintentionally, by their hand, and that's just, oh, it makes you go weak at the knees, doesn't it? Thinking about
Mm.
that.
Mm.
That you can gaze upon that very representation of that person's psyche and artistic practice, and oh, it's a wonderful feeling. There's no feeling in the world like that.
I'm always so
If you have,
mm.
no, go ahead.
I'm always so interested in how art represents the cultural moment of the world that the creator of the art lived in, right?
Hmm.
That's definitely something that I'm always super invested in when it comes to things like old Japanese art, right? And it's not just necessarily painting; it can be literature and poetry and any other type of art, even just like so in Japanese culture, there was a thing in the Edo period called misemono, which is literally just like doing weird stuff, right? And I
Hmm.
always want to think again, we never want to put the artist on the couch. We never want to armchair psychology the artist. But I always think like, how interesting is it that this artist came out of this particular world, the world that they lived in, their current culture. Their if you want like a very specific example of this, it's the meme of the world that they lived in that then gets recreated on the page based on the way that they see the world. And that's something that to me, like, it sounds like that's the recreation that you're talking about, to be able to see the world through the eyes of the artist.
Exactly. I knew we wouldn't make it through this without discussing memes.
Ha!
It's just too interesting, right? It's
Yeah,
just, oh,
yeah.
the idea that. that inscrutable, intangible unit of culture and like a
Mm-hmm.
specific perspective on that culture is preserved.
Mm-hmm.
It's delicious, for lack of a better word. It tickles all the right parts of my brain. And I'm just gonna rip this band-aid off right now. You can't separate art from the context it was made in or the person who made it.
Yeah.
It can't be done.
Yeah.
Um, Full stop. Sorry, guys.
Mm-hmm.
And that yes, that does mean all art is inherently political,
Mm.
whether or not it was created with that in mind. So let's just rip that band-aid off too.
Yeah. Um, Witch Hazel is asking a question that I think is a really good question. For some of our viewers,
Hmm.
we should define exactly what we mean by a meme, right? And so I'll have a quick stab at it, and then I'll ask if you can add something to it. Um,
I don't know what I'm gonna have to add. You're the professor here.
okay, super valid. Um, so, what is a meme? The original term meme was defined by Steven Pinker, who has done a lot of bad in the world. He's just like we're talking about, just like with art, it's hard to disassociate or disassemble oneself between the creator and the created. But for good or ill, Steven Pinker was a philosopher, is a philosopher, I think he's still alive, who
Gross.
yeah, right. um, Philosopher, linguist, political dude, who gave us the term meme, and he defined it as a snapshot of culture. It's literally taken from the word gene. So a meme is a snapshot of a cultural moment. And when we think about a silly picture on the internet, we're often not thinking about what does that really mean? What is represented by a meme? When we look at a meme, I think we can define meme currently, the current iteration of a meme, as belonging to a specific cultural moment. It's important because it reflects modern culture in the exact moment that we're living in, but also it's almost always collaborative. So you are taking a meme, recreating the meme, showing the meme off, having somebody else pick up that meme. Now that's really important for me personally, because kind of that's what was happening in Japan in the Edo period. That a lot of people were picking up cultural ideas, putting them on woodblock prints because this is the prevailing artwork of the day, and then passing those woodblock prints to other people who would then carve them and make small iterative changes, and then use this new woodblock print to literally meme on the previous person's picture, right? Um, and so I think when we talk about memes, what we're talking about here, as we're discussing the creation of art and the cultural moment, we're really talking about the lens that says, I was here. This is the time that I lived in.
Yeah, you're 100% right.
Mm-hmm.
And to build on that, that's sort of been a phenomenon. I mean, we have a word for it now,
Yeah.
kind of like we have a word for autism now, but
Yeah.
it's been a phenomenon that's existed as long as humanity has been around
Mm-hmm.
and has had the time to produce works of art,
Yeah. Yeah.
which there's a lot of, scholarly debate about what is art, and I'm very pragmatic about it. It's an object made by another human
Yep.
for a to fulfill a purpose, whether or not that was purely aesthetic or functional isn't really doesn't matter to me.
Yeah.
Um, it's something that was made intentionally by a human as an act of creative expression.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, things that were made unintentionally can also become art.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
as
It's true.
always, draw the line where you want to, but I tend to be very open-minded about it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I know you and I have talked a bit about the Genji Monogatari, which, in case you didn't know, I'm the reason she has to read that. Um,
in
I'm the
its
reason she
entirety.
suffers.
In its
Yeah,
entirety. I shall not let this go. I will die on this hill.
and as your integrity and your commitment to that is inspiring, genuinely. That
um,
you would read this entire book that you hate just because you
I,
said you would.
I want to. I want to be very clear. I want to be very, very, very clear. Um, it is not that I hate the book Genji Monogatari. It is that I hate the character of Genji himself, right? I think very, very genuinely that that the author Murasaki Shikibu was doing something very satirical, very interesting. I think she was deconstructing
Absolutely.
society in a really cool way. And the way that I like to talk about that is actually to talk about another book. There's another book that is called the Gossamer Diaries. I need to figure out what the Japanese is for that because I have forgotten. Um, it's
It's just a cool as hell title.
it is Kagero Niki. So it's the journal of the lady from Kagero, or the Kagero lady, right? Kagero
Hmm.
Niki. Now, the reason that I bring this up, and I think this is super interesting, is that the entire book of Kagero Niki is about her crying about her husband. She is one of the lower ranked wives of this husband. We know Japan is a polygamist society, so men could have lots of wives. She is one of the lower ranked ones. And so it's like a huge problem culturally that since she's the lower ranked wife, she never sees her husband. And so she spends the whole book like complaining about him. That she's like, oh, he's so awful. I never get to see him. He never comes to see me. We don't get to spend any time together. He spends time with the other wives that are more highly ranked than me. I always talk about two parts of this book that drive me mad, right? There's one part where she says, the Japanese really translates to something like, we were together this one night, and then 9 months later, a thing happened, and it's never mentioned ever again in the book, right? And so we can clearly suss out what the thing is, right? Clearly, they spent a night together, and then the thing happened, which was the birth of the child. And it's just so washed over in the book because it's not important. It's not important to what she's saying. And then the other one that I like, there is almost nearly an entire chapter in this book that's devoted to this moment where she sees a boat and she thinks the boat kind of resembles his shoe. And she starts crying, and she cries for an entire chapter because she's like, the boat looked like his shoe. It's utterly ridiculous. But what we truly see in this book that is entirely like 400 pages of text that's all about how angry she is at her husband for not spending time with her, it's a love story. It's a love story. It's a love letter. It is her love letter to her husband. The entire thing is just saying, I love you so much that I'm furious that you don't spend more time with me, right? And I think that when I realized that literature can do that, that it can look like one thing but be something entirely different, to me, I think that's when I awakened to Japanese literature to be able to say, you don't have to have what's on the page be the story that you're telling. Um, and like for me, that's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. Like, it's unbelievable that Genji Monogatari is satire in the form of what very much looks like this life story of this horrible dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's when you engage with literature in sort of like a metatextual way
Mm-hmm.
like that,
Mm-hmm.
when you get your thinking cap on
Yeah.
and you really dig into it critically and be like, okay, here's what's being said here, here's the context that's being presented, but what's really going on?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's one of my favorite things in the world. I absolutely love literary analysis.
Yeah. Yeah. Me too.
It brings me so much joy.
Yeah.
It's completely revolutionized the way that I engage with certain pieces of literature and
Mm-hmm.
radically increased my enjoyment of them.
Yeah.
In particular, I think about Thus Spake Zarathustra by
Yeah.
Nietzsche
Yeah. Yeah.
in particular.
Mm-hmm.
Um, how once you realize that he's not being serious, it's a really
Mm-hmm.
interesting read.
Yeah. Also a great
But
piece of
on one,
music. Also sprach Zarathustra, yeah?
yeah, no, I see what you're putting down. Let me guess, your favorite part of 2001: A Space Odyssey is just all the bone imagery, huh?
My favorite part of 2001: A Space Odyssey is that I never have to watch it ever again.
What, you mean you don't want 90, like 88 minutes of movie before a single line of dialogue is spoken?
No, thank you. I'll pass. It's remarkable
Well, well,
how the rest of the movies kind of go off the rails so much, but I digress.
I mean, it's not like the book's on rails either.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Um,
It's, yeah, it's I have such a complex relationship with Kubrick
mm-hmm.
as a filmmaker.
Yeah, same, same.
Yeah, I think anybody who really stops and thinks about it kind of does.
Yeah, yeah. Poor Shelley
Anyway,
Duvall.
let's check
Yes,
in.
I completely agree. I
Yeah,
completely
I
agree.
was gonna say let's check in with chat. How's chat doing?
Yeah, I think chat's doing okay. I hope that you're
How
all
you
doing
doing,
okay.
chat?
Yeah.
Are you bored of me yet?
I think we are running short on time. There were definitely some questions that I did not get the chance to address, so I guess I wonder if there's anything that you really want to give voice to that we didn't have the opportunity to talk about.
Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, cool. My headphones with my microphone died, so I just wanted to make
Oh
sure.
no.
Oh,
Okay.
hang on 1 minute.
Yeah. Take your time. Take your time. Aw, Subaki Line
Um,
says, I could never be bored of you, CoffeeCat. Also, same. Same.
that is a very sweet sentiment, but even I get bored of me sometimes. Um, is there anything I'd like to address that we didn't address yet? I mean, I wrote a lot,
I'm sure,
and
yeah.
I probably wrote too much. But I do so much better when I have something to work from.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I guess, yeah, I can touch on that.
Yeah.
Um, we've talked a lot about art and art criticism and
Mm-hmm.
literary analysis and things
Mm-hmm.
like that.
Yeah.
Um, and the reason I really enjoy it so much is because academia really gave me the tools I needed to express myself
Mm-hmm.
um, in a way that nothing before it has.
Yeah.
Um, I wrote down something about that. Give me a second here.
Of course.
So, yeah, if you've had more than one conversation with me, it's very likely you've noticed that I have a somewhat unusual manner of speaking.
Mm-hmm.
In the psychiatric establishment, it's known as stilted or pedantic speech, which
Mm.
the latter, which I really both, I wouldn't be mad if it didn't kind of fit. Um,
Mm.
One definition from the Journal of Autism and Developmental Disorders defines it as speech conveying more information than necessary, using vocabulary and grammar expected from formal writing rather than conversational speech.
Hey.
And it's worth noting that this trait isn't exclusive to individuals on the autism spectrum. It manifests with other types of thought disorders and schizoid disorders as well, which I know we talked about how DID is
Yeah.
incredibly misunderstood and maligned by pop culture, but so is schizophrenia.
Yeah.
Yeah. What I had written here was schizophrenic disorders are probably even more misunderstood thanks to popular culture, and that's an
Mm-hmm.
impressive yet dubious achievement.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I've often said that being introduced to academic writing in college was the first time I ever felt able to communicate effectively.
Mm.
And college was probably the one situation in my life where my particular kind of ASD was primarily beneficial. The idea of being given a set of rules and principles and guidelines in which to effectively communicate and argue and present information just it did a lot for me.
Mm,
I thrived in that environment. I still do. I miss it.
yeah.
I I would come home at the end of the day, and in the space of 3 hours, I could get like a 10-page paper with a full bibliography done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And which, it's probably kind of unfair because I know that's not an easy thing to do, but given the way that I think and talk and all of that, it's kind of more just like, okay, these are the sources I have, and I'm just gonna talk like I would normally.
Mm-hmm.
um, but I love it. I love academic writing. I love the process of research, and I studied a lot of things in college. I originally went for an art degree.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I did eventually finish that,
Yeah.
but I also finished a degree in art history and another in library science.
Okay.
And we've talked about how I have beef with autistic characters whose
Yeah.
main thing is just being good at math and science and logical things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, because I think, at least in my experience, I can do both. I love logic and rhetoric and
Right.
science, science in general, even though it's not something I studied,
Yeah.
like in the sense that most people think of it like a physical or life science or things like
Right.
that.
Yeah. Of course.
But I take deep pleasure and derive a lot of fulfillment from creating works of art too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I guess if there's one thing I want to communicate um, about people on the autism spectrum is that we're all people.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're complicated. There's so much more to us, just like any other human being.
Mm-hmm.
You can't reduce a human being to just a handful of things.
Yeah. There was, I
Yeah,
think,
I guess that's where I'll end off because I know it's getting quite late for you.
yeah, yeah. All right, two things. First of all, Noburaka-sama, welcome, welcome, welcome. Hi there, welcome. It's so nice to see you again. I haven't seen you in a long time, um, so I'm happy you're here. It's probably because it's later than usual for me, but it's nice to see you. But on what you're saying, I want to kind of springboard off of that and say, I think maybe about maybe more than 5 years ago, there was this kind of move toward person first language, right?
Hmm.
And I love it as a concept, right? Conceptually, I love um, treating people as people first, right? A person with a disability or different ability rather than a quote unquote disabled person, or a person from a racial minority rather than a minority person or something like that. Like this idea
Yeah,
of person first language is so important in my opinion. But I think the problem, as always, is it's just so hard to keep up with these things. And if it's hard for me as somebody who cares about this stuff, who really, really does care about these kinds of things, I, as much as I hate saying it, I get the complaint. I understand the complaint from people who are outside these communities who are constantly, you know, angry over the fact that, well, now I have to learn a new way to say this. Now I have to learn a new word for this culture or for this type of person or for this and this and this. Like I get it. I get it. I understand why it's frustrating that language is constantly changing. And as a linguist, like I obviously language is changing because descriptivism is much better than prescriptivism. But I think the point that you made is really, really important, that we're all just people, right? Um, and it's really, really hard when we see certain segments of the population, because they saw a movie about somebody with DID, or because they saw The Good Doctor, or because they watch Big Bang Theory, think that they can recognize this is the way that those people are. I just don't like categorizations in general.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think I think it's a very human impulse to try to categorize and define and label and organize that which is fundamentally somewhat chaotic
Yeah.
from our perspective.
Yeah.
The universe, right down to the cellular level, is a delightful mix of
Mm-hmm.
entropy becoming order, becoming entropy forever and ever. And
Yeah.
one of the biggest benefits in my life has been learning to find comfort in that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's good that everything changes.
Yeah.
It's, I think if I fear anything, it's stagnation
Mm-hmm.
creatively,
Mm-hmm.
intellectually in my life. I don't want to feel like I'm wasting my time or
Yeah.
that I'm just stuck in the same ways of thinking or acting.
Mm-hmm.
And that,
Absolutely.
again, I mean, kind of flies in the face of like sort of the stereotypes some people have about autism spectrum disorders, where it's like, oh, it's all about hating change
Yeah.
and needing order. And that, that might be true for some people. Like
Mm-hmm.
I said before,
Yeah.
it's not true for me.
Yeah. Hmm.
I want to keep growing and learning, and I want to be challenged, and I want to flow with the world rather than exist in opposition to the current.
I love that. I love that. Um, after we're done here, I have a couple things to share with you on exactly that note. But I think that that is the perfect place to end it. You know, this idea that we are changing all the time, and it's a beautiful thing. I really want to thank you for being willing to speak openly about your experiences and share some of who you are with us. I think this was really really beautiful, and I'm so thankful that you were willing to be so open. I know we actually didn't get to everything that we wanted to talk about, and I think that's okay, because I think what we did talk about was important, and also a little bit chaotic.
Yeah. No, I think it was better that we just kind of like let it
Mm-hmm.
move organically. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's sort of the whole point of this, right? It's not, the point isn't that it's scripted content. The point
Yeah.
is that we can sit here and have an honest to goodness conversation
Yeah.
and hopefully both learn from it.
Yeah, it is your platform, and I am just helping provide you with the ability to speak openly because I think it's very important. And you taught me a lot today. You taught me a lot today, and I'm so thankful for that.
I always learn a lot from you. I'm glad that I can help return the favor somewhat.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I do my best. So,
And it's always a joy to just to get to spend time with you. You know that.
thank you. So sweet. Um, all right, well, I think this is a good place to end it. So, everybody out there, everybody listening in, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much, CoffeeCat. This was really, really, really wonderful. So,
Yeah. Likewise, I had a great time.
hi.
And thanks to everybody who made time to come listen to us talk.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. So, all right, everybody at home, please take care of yourselves. You're all getting a gold star for the day for listening in. So thankful.
Yay.
Yay. Gold stars. And can't wait to see you soon. So we will see you on the next episode of Minority Report. And also, I'll just be here doing stuff like reading Genji Monogatari. Yeah. All right. So, see you soon. Until next time, matane!
Matane.